Football has captured the imagination of the Caymanian people like no other sport. When a young 21-year-old immigrant from Jamaica named Lenny Hugh arrived here in March 1958, he was surprised to find football already here.
And I was passing the library and they were playing football behind. So I went back home and came back with a ball and I got involved. I said, why not start a competition between West Bay and Georgetown? And then it ended up with 4 teams, Triple C, Georgetown, West Bay, high school. Andrew Phillips was at the high school teaching and he played and he formed a team there.
There were others who helped lay the foundation for football in the Cayman Islands as well.
First was a man called Mr. R.T. Banks, Mr. Timothy McField, and the godfather. I would say of Cayman football in general. I mean, other people call godfathers, but I would say the godfather of Cayman football was a man called Ed Bush. At least he was the godfather of West Bay football.
Timothy Teacher McField helped develop the foundation of many sports in the Cayman Islands. But none of them would resonate with the youth quite like football.
I always loved football, watching it on TV, listening on the news about football. So it's been a dream to be a professional.
The feelings that you get from the game are unbelievable, no matter if it's happiness or sadness. That one game can mean so much to you, and that's why I love football, because it's so full of emotion and passion, and that's how you learn from it. Learn from your mistakes and from your victories as well.
I just like playing football.
Like my whole family's been playing football since it started, the whole thing. My grandfather started the first league here, so it was sort of automatic for me to just get into it immediately.
My whole family has been playing football for like many generations, and it's a very fun, interactive game.
Through its early years, football dominated the sports scene in the Cayman Islands, with the adult game reaching deep into the community. Games at the Annex Field in Georgetown attracted huge crowds, and Cayman's football stars of the day became household names.
The level of participation and the level of football was much more intense, was much more identified. It was more the community, they used to identify with the football team.
Most of the boys who got a chance to play football back then came from the Georgetown area. As a result, players from certain neighborhoods and even certain families dominated the adult teams.
I come from a football family, as you know, they're Ramones, and coming out of Central Strand, a lot of footballers come from that area, prominent football players. At one point in time, my brothers, uncles, we dominated, were prominent players in the national team. We had about 8 or so family members representing the national team at some time.
With limited opportunities to play and little formal training available, young boys learned their football skills mostly from the senior players.
I was seeing like Coach Gilley and Renard and those guys playing, going down every Sunday and watch them play until we got to that age where we can, beg them for a game. They run us off to the side, said, no, you're too small, whatever. But gradually we keep coming around. And from that, you know, me as a player back then, I learned from those guys. I seen those guys playing and watched them all the time and stuff like that. Like I said, I didn't have a television at the time.
Everybody coach each other. What they learned was reading books. They might have watched a highlighted game and come. So at those times, we didn't really have anyone that had any technical ability. It was just learned and what we have experienced from playing against other visiting teams at the time.
The senior league back then also gave Cayman's youth something else: sports heroes.
The days gone by, although we didn't have any youth teams in place or any set youth teams, we had a senior national team that we could all look up to and all aspire to, with players like Gilly and Renard and those players.
One of the key developments in youth football in the 1980s was the creation of a primary school football league. Former national team player Neil Murray, who now helps to run the primary school program, said that just having a league with more structure attracted many more youth to the game.
And the Premier League was playing when we were in school, maybe not on such a wide scale as it is now, but the teams that could put forward teams did play in the Premier League, which was called the Pee Wee League then. So I think it just gives a chance for the kids to actually experience what it is to actually play games, and you can actually see it on Saturday mornings. You know, the kids get, if they lose a game, you know, they start to shed tears. So it's a serious thing. It may not be because of the team, maybe just because of themselves, but we're trying to instill that team factor into the whole thing.
In 2005, the Caribbean Utilities Company provided major sponsorship to the primary school football league, supplying equipment for players and referees, uniforms for the children, and other much-needed resources. The CUC Primary Football League now boasts 18 teams with more than 500 players and is a model for youth sports development. In the primary school league, children up to the age of 11 learn the basics of football. However, developing football for large numbers of children of different ages is a challenge that is just now being addressed.
As a young child, you pick a sport to play in, and because the passion is there and it's so strong, it develops as a younger kid. But when you get older and you see there's no opportunity to go further in the football, that's where we start to lose the kids. So over the years, we've always had great young teams. You can see it in the primary school league, the PFL. Guaranteed every year in the PFL there's great teams coming out, great players, but after the primary school level where there's no structure for the kids to move from that 13 to 15 age group is where they start to go down.
One of DART's corporate values is teamwork and respect for the individual. In the community in which we live, it's been very important to us to support youth sports and programming, as it helps to build character and a stronger understanding of what it means to work together to deliver a common result.
DART is committed to being an active, responsible corporate citizen. We identified youth sports as a key focus area for our sponsorships and philanthropic giving early on. And we're so happy to see teams and individual athletes who have benefited from these sponsorships excelling in their chosen disciplines.
I'm in a football pitch. It's only your team and everybody else, and it's you thinking in the zone with everybody else.
We're one team and we like to work as a team to beat other teams, and we stick to one playing style and we keep to it, and we just work on it every day. Just try to improve it every day.
I try to stay confident in my team and myself, and I also try to play my best because you never know who's watching, and also just have fun.
I'm kind of competitive, so I always really want to win.
Youth football in the Cayman Islands is about more than winning and losing. It has the ability to shape lives.
Football is not just to play football. The children have to enjoy it. Number two, they have to use it to discipline themselves for academics, for everything.
Football have always been an important part, a critical part in my development as a person, as a human being, as a father, as a mentor, as an employee. Because it taught me the skills of teamwork, it taught me respect, it taught me, and it gave me opportunities that I would have not normally had.
Youth coaches sometimes take on a much more important role than teaching children how to play the game.
After my parents' divorce when I was really young, that was, a very traumatic time in my life, and, I was lost, but I then had surrogates, Gilly Seymour became my surrogate dad, not just me, but, many of us. He showed us what, the true meaning of hard work was, about citizenship. It's not just about putting on a jersey, but it's about wearing, your country's colors and the pride that you must feel from that. So, he was instrumental in putting, and not only just putting football, at our feet, but putting life in our hands.
We realize that, there is certain discipline lacking in different degrees in homes. But then football coaches and teams or clubs can help to mold the discipline.
It has helped me out because every time my grades dip down, my teacher calls Coach Virgil, and we always have a talk, and it goes back up quickly.
For coaches like Academy Sports Club's Paul Biles, the chance to shape lives is why they get involved.
Decided to get involved. It had a lot to do with the essence of your question, actually, which is how you can contribute to youth and to the characters. And so serving as a mentor, I think a coach has a huge opportunity to do that, as well as ensuring that the kids are on track with things like their education and so on as well. And that's something that we actually do here at Academy. That's something I'm very proud of and why I like to be here. It's very important for parents, coaches, and all the stakeholders to understand that this is about the sport, but it's also about the players and about young men and young women developing their characters and going on to something else in life. All right, so you bring your shin pads?
Yes, sir.
And you bring who else?
Fred.
Fred.
Who's
Fred? Fred is focus, respect, effort, and discipline. All right, bring it in quickly. What's the word for today?
Communication.
Yeah, I like that. On 3, nice and strong. 1, 2, 3.
Communication!
For some boys, like Michael Miles, the mere notion of attending college came from an involvement with football.
Like we were like 13 and 14 years old, and that was one of the first times that I started to kind of have the thought, can I actually survive at college? Because, when people talk about college to us, back in the 90s and 80s, it was like this far-fetched thing where you have to be brilliant and very smart. And he kind of broke it down like, you don't really have to be that smart, you just have to try hard.
I was fortunate to have gone off to university at the age of 17. I was fairly young, one of the youngest in my group, and that was through the organization in Pioneer. It was Winston Chung, who was the technical director at that time. And during those times, a lot of kids were going off to schools getting scholarships.
College, was instrumental for me because it gave me an opportunity to get the school part right. I set goals for the first time because prior to that, I played football. It gave me self-respect. When I remember getting my degree and, it was like the clouds open up because it was the first time where I had options. Before I left Cayman, I was a kid that graduated high school with no O levels, no A levels. I didn't have any options. If I didn't go off, I would end up in a dead-end job.
Although football was the path to college for players like Anthony Ramon, Michael Miles, and many other young men in the past, that has not happened as frequently in recent years. Former Minister of Sports, Mark Scotland, who now heads up the youth football program for the Cayman Islands Football Association, says getting more young people into university is a renewed focus for the CIFA.
Another focus is to get more of our young men, the young boys, as they finish high school, off to university as well. We see very good success with the girls' national program over the last five or so years, where we have over 20 girls now abroad playing football in college. We want to see the same thing with boys football again. Years ago there were some boys in college. We want to see more of that again.
To go off to university, the players must get good grades. CIFA's Bruce Blake says the youth need a lot of support to make sure they get those grades.
When it comes to going off to university, yes, the universities will look at your football skills, but they will also look at your grades. And also, I would like that those kids that go on to try to become professionals, that they do have a backup in case that does not work out. So we need to try to get the message across to the parents, the coaches, and the kids that they have to maintain their studies and maintain very high grades, because it's very competitive to get into university. And you can be the most skillful player, but if you don't have the grades, you're not getting in.
Brianna Hydes, who has helped Cayman's under-17 and under-20 teams reach unprecedented heights on the field in recent years, knows that sacrifices have to be made when it comes to keeping her grades up while she's in college.
Football has been the building block of my life, and I can honestly say without football, my academics wouldn't be as important to me, because I knew from the very beginning when it came to football, if I wanted to play, my grades had to be there, and without my grades, I couldn't play football. So that's always pushed me as far as grades went. I mean, it's always been a challenge. I mean, it's just something that you have to set your mind up and say, I want it, and if you want it, anything is possible. It's college, balancing academics and football, you kind of really don't have a social life, and you kind of have to accept that. I mean, it's be successful and great with the grades in football, or have a social life. It's just a choice you have to make in life, and sometimes it sucks, but then you look at it and you're like, you know what? I'm doing what I love, and they're always going to be there if they're true friends.
I want speed! I want speed!
There was this time when we went to Disney and we were down 2-0 in the second half, and we came back 2-2, and then they got another goal in extra time. We got one again, then they scored, so it was 4-3 and the game finished. But everyone was happy.
When I was in primary school, we were playing prospect in the final, and it was 2-2. And in the last few moments of the game, I scored the final goal, and we won the cup.
I remember the first time I ever got a football was when Mr. Bernie Bush, I think he gave it to me.
Who's your favorite football player and why?
Probably Santi Cazorla, because I like how he's very good technically, and he's very good at passing the ball.
Cristiano Ronaldo, because he has skills, speed, scores goals all the time.
To me, it has to be Eden Hazard.
My favorite player is Messi because his dribbling skills. scoring.
Although youth football has grown in Cayman, there are still challenges to the sport. The men's national team has seen a steady decline in the world rankings since the mid-1990s, falling from as high as 127th to as low as 196th in 2013. Getting the senior team competitive again is going to take the involvement of all stakeholders.
Myself growing up, watching the Gillis Seymours, the Lee Ramones, the Neil Murrays, I wanted to be like them, the Arden Rivers. I've been coaching Red Bay Primary School for the last 6 years, and I ask the question every year when I start training, name me a national team player. And our kids can't do it. And I feel one of our biggest problems is our kids aspire to be like Ronaldo and Messi, but you can't interact with that person. Whereas me growing up, I wanted to be like Virgil, I wanted to be like Lee, I wanted to be like Gary Whitaker, and I could actually interact with him. I could have seen Virgil here at the field. I could have watched him live, and that makes a difference. Kids growing up in Argentina want to be like Messi because that's their hero. In Cayman, we no longer have those heroes that our kids want to be like.
Getting parents to support football, both in terms of volunteering and supporting their children, has been a challenge.
We need total involvement. A lot of parental involvement was missing, but the involvement was very minimal. And parents and fathers were missed in action. And there were a lot of people who just stand on the sideline and watch good game, but as to reach in and stretch a hand to help, a lot of lip service.
Parental involvement is nil. We've had games here on weekends, on Sundays, established clubs in Cayman, and 8 players turn up, and you've got 1 coach and 1 parent. We changed it to Sundays so parents could come out. The problems in football represent the problems in the society. Parents need to get out, go and watch the kids, and get involved. There is nothing more valuable than a boy or a girl being watched by their parent.
We would like that when we go to a practice or when we go to a match, that we see a majority of the parents there to support their kids. I understand that some parents on island, they have 2 or 3 jobs and they have a lot of single parents on island. That's understandable. But we all know that for your kids to do well and for your kids to advance, the parents must take an active interest.
Getting adequate football coaching has also been a challenge.
To play is not to coach. To coach is an entirely different discipline. How to deal with kids, how to deal with a 9-year-old, what not to say to a 13-year-old, okay? How to coach other age groups, what to say and how to get them motivated. It's all different.
If in 10 years Cayman doesn't have some actual professional grade coaches who have been given the opportunity to go away and spend 3 months, 6 months acquiring and developing their talents and coming back and sharing that with the grassroots football, as a country we failed.
Cayman Athletic Sport Club instructor Ernie Gilly Seymour thinks more of the men who have earned football scholarships should become coaches.
More of those guys should have came back and give back something to the game. They should be some of the coaches now coaching some of the youth teams. And a lot of them is not giving anything. And I mean, I coach them and I know some of them, and if they feel offended me talking here today, they better feel offended and find themselves out to the field and start giving back something.
CIFA is now making the training of coaches and referees a priority.
We understand, especially for youth football, that you need specialized coaches and specialized referees. And we're going to make a push over the next couple of years to ensure that a lot of our coaches are trained to coach youth football. We have a few coaching courses coming up that will be geared specifically towards the youth, and also not only coaching but refereeing. So we're going to concentrate on those 2 areas to make sure that as many people on the island are certified youth coaches and certified youth referees, because it takes a certain temperament to coach and deal with the youth.
Football in the Cayman Islands can continue to grow and improve, but expectations should be realistic.
We have to be committed to youth development, and we have to continue to set realistic goals that our kids can reach.
We only have a population of 50,000 people, 25,000 Caymanians. I think a lot of people in the public have an expectation that we're going to go to the World Cup and we're going to win the World Cup. My expectation and my plans would be to try to get as many of our children away to university as possible.
Many of those closely involved in the sport say the main thing that is needed is simply a comprehensive plan that brings all of the necessary elements together.
You have to start with a plan. It has to be a comprehensive plan that includes where you have football now and where you want it to go over a 20-year period.
We all have a role to play. Parents, coaches, the wider community has a role to play, but someone needs to take charge and steer the development of a strategy for Cayman as a football nation.
Some, like Lenny Hugh, have believed for many years that youth football is better off separated from the CIFA.
I think personally that we have to separate youth football from the upper level football. We should leave Cayman Islands Football Association to manage the upper level football, the adults. I think the youth football should be managed by a different association.
Like CIFA, the Cayman Islands government has a plan that very much involves children.
Well, obviously a very important integral part of sports development for the country is to have a policy direction, a strategy in which, in how we work together, different sports and government, to develop, sports throughout the country. And so the sports policy, which I, very proud to have been a part of during my term as the Minister for Sports, was completed several months ago. That sports policy is based around what we call the long-term athlete development model, which is, again, taking athletes from a very young age. You look at a triangle where at a very, very young age they all participate, whether it be 5, 6 years old, starting to play football, starting to play other sports. But participating as much as possible, as often as possible, in a fun way, and then we start to see them focus more as they grow older.
In an effort to engage children in football at a very young age, CIFA recently launched the Maples Grassroots Program in 2013. Maples and Calder are funding the initiative over 4 years. The primary goal of the Grassroots Program is simply to introduce more children to the sport.
We launched the Maples Grassroots Program this year, and I'm thankful for Maples and Calder for coming on board and assisting with that initiative. The Maples Grassroots Program is for kids from 4 to 12 and is geared towards those kids that don't play football or are not necessarily active. It's a program where we encourage everyone to touch the ball and get familiar with the ball.
It won't be just the young children that get attention. Spurred by successes of its under-15 teams in 2013, CIFA plans to develop a cohesive strategy for all of its age groups.
We're going to try to ensure that our national teams, our under-13 national team, our under-15 national team, and our under-17 national team, which we'll be launching in September, that we give those kids as much exposure as possible.
The structure is here, the facilities are here, there is money here. When you hear how much money is in grassroots, there's no excuses in Cayman for us not developing really good teams.
You have an opportunity to represent the country, you have an opportunity to get an education, you have an opportunity to, if you are disciplined and sacrifice enough, to make a living out of this thing.
With everyone working together, the future of youth football is as bright as the smiles on the players' faces.
What are some of the things your father taught you?
He always teaches, covering and stuff like that. Because he was a defender too, and I'm a defender, so he can relate to me a lot.
Like having your dad as a coach?
It's not different really. You have to do everything the same. The only difference is you have to carry all the stuff.
Who's better, you or your father?
Oh, I'm probably better than my dad.